offer the invocation?
Sir. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to our joint BCC TDC meeting. May the Lord be with you. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to meet together with the Board of County Commissioners and the Tourist Development Council to have a public workshop to conduct the business of both bodies. Guide us today in our discussions. Help us to remain with open minds as ideas are presented and discussed. And as always, help us treat everybody with patience and fairness and kindness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being here this morning. We'll head right into new business. Tab 1, review and discussion of draft WCT 2026-2030 strategic plan. Who's going to offer that? Okay, you're recognized.
There we go. Got it. Thank you, sir. It's good. Just push it harder. That was the key. Thank you again for your time. The last time we were here, we both commented on what a spectacular sort of level of engagement we had. And so, again, open minds and patience. Thank you, sir, for that. That's very kind. So we're here to present our draft strategic plan for 26 through 30 for Walton County Tourism. So two things we sort of want to use as an introduction to the plan before we get into the agenda. Our goal is to get to today and get some consensus on the top priorities that we've established and identified during the plan. And we intend to take the next 90 days working very closely with Matt and the team at Walton County Tourism to define and come back with a full plan that has timelines, key performance indicators, some proposed budgets, and some real specificity to the plan. So we're going to talk about some very broad topics today, but also have the opportunity to get a little bit more granular in what we talk about. So the overall agenda, plan, and then overview of the strategic recommendations. Yes?
Your name, please?
Oh, I'm Scott Beck. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. An overview of the plan, the strategic recommendations, and get into some discussion back and forth, and then if we have some time left over for some Q&A. We're just going to tag team this, so the other gentleman that will be speaking is Dan Fenton, F-E-N-T-O-N. So one of the things that we wanted to start with was the level of enthusiasm we have for this opportunity. And there's some really core reasons why we feel this is such a unique opportunity. We do a lot of this work with a lot of destinations, and there's sort of three key sauces. One is, do you have the staff, the community engagement, the level of sort of participation that makes these types of things possible? That's a big check. We sensed that through all the community engagement. We saw that in the resident sentiment survey. We really discovered that through the SWOT analysis process and meeting with so many people that were engaged that's a real positive. There's also this idea of product. And by any measure, this is an incredible product. From north to south to beach to different extremes, there's a lot of really positive things about the product. And then the last one is resources. And there are resources here to be strategic and look forward. And really leverage the incredible work that has been done. So one of the things we find when you talk about strategic planning is sometimes when you talk about the future and looking at new opportunities, there's some level of that's a view of the editorialization on what has happened. So we want to start by saying there's a lot of really, really positive things that have happened and continue to happen in this community. We think for the next 4 to 5 years, there are the combination of resources, product, and people to make a really big difference. And make differences that have long-term sustainability. So, Mr. Fenton, anything you want to add to that? Okay. So we have 5 strategic recommendations. They're bucketed into 5 priority areas. And these areas were identified through all that work that we've done. So you've all heard about the event matrix, the demand driver scorecard, the stakeholder community engagement, resident sentiment survey, SWOT analysis. All of those things are what created these 5 priority areas. And we believe there is a relevance back to some really key components of the goals and missions of the organization. One is to continue to drive the impact of the visitor economy on the residents of Walton County and the economy of Walton County. And doing this by focusing on some key areas, some ways to keep product relevant, to keep product moving in a direction where there is evolution and real substantive movement forward with product enhancement, product stability, the opportunity to look at ways to speak to and engage with your guests in ways that encourages length of stay, that continues the strong nature of repeat business, but also allows you to identify and build new markets. Because that is a very important part of any aspect of any organization, is to find and build new clients. All recognizing that your repeat client is still your most valuable and most important asset that you have. And then to look at ways where there's some real strategic engagement to build and grow and enhance the opportunity to continue that. So one of those areas that we will talk about is how you can engage in and look at development in and around air service. An example of how you can take a strategic opportunity with resources, great people, great product, and build a plan to have future impact and future growth and future success. So first and foremost, I want to stop there a little bit and see if there's any questions and sort of where we are in the process or what the goals are for today.
Any questions for Mr. Beck? Any questions? Seeing none, you recognize.
Okay.
Just want to add one comment that we talked about last meeting too, and some of the things that you're going to hear, there are shifts in some of the recommendations related to sort of what we do today versus what we're recommending for the future. So there definitely are areas here that to execute, and Scott's talking about coming back with a lot of detail, you're going to see areas where we're going to say, to really get at that space, we need to make some shifts in terms of resource allocation, human resource allocation, when it comes to how we go after these. So we're going to try to talk through these, but don't hesitate as we go through them to kind of raise that question of the how here, because we want to make sure before we're done that we sort of talked about this last time, that the how is in here. Today, it's still continuing to make sure we got the right priorities, but the final, we want everybody in this room to go, we understand the how. So I just want to say that as we go through this.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the first priority area that we want to go through has been defined in our plan as diversifying and balancing the tourism economy. So this is one that really looks at how we broaden the visitor base, looking at two or three key components. So this is off-beach and off-peak offerings, how we invest and look towards the concept of the authentic Walton brand that's been expressed and is part of the strategy, the current strategy, and how we cultivate two areas of big opportunity that we have seen through all of our work. This is how you can grow and make more impactful the meetings and events business, especially in the off-season, and then how you look at a very forward-looking strategic plan for event strategy support, event strategy development, and event strategy recruitment. So currently, the event strategy is one that has served the community very, very well. And we define it as serving a very broad spectrum of events in a very surface level. We feel there's a really important strategic opportunity over the next 3 to 5 years to look at an event strategy that really hones in on how you support the brand of Walton through the event strategy, and how you can do two really key things. Incremental stay, drive longer visitation, and drive visitation in off-peak season. We think that an event strategy can do all three of those things and do them very, very well. And again, there's this unique combination of a product. We've identified gaps in product as it relates to certain aspects of what's offered in terms of the demand driver scorecard work that we did. To give you one example from that, we noticed a gap in the offering of family-friendly amenities, whether that's attractions, events, whatever that is. But there's an opportunity to look at that and develop that as a core strategy that's part of the evaluation and the criteria that dictates the level of support and the level of engagement. We also think there's a really big opportunity to look at how you develop the content of those events. So rather than giving the precious marketing dollars away, that a strategy change is the very best person to utilize the marketing dollars of this organization is this organization. And how do you maintain that opportunity to support events and support the development of key demand drivers while keeping the resources, the very precious and very important resources of sales and marketing dollars within the organization? Any questions on that priority?
Any questions? Seeing none? Oh, you're recognized.
Thank you. I know you've probably heard that I think Kelly and I hear the word event and we like literally go, oh my God. But I like a lot of what you're saying, but and, you know, we've just reworked an entire how we handle our events in-house, our event strategy. So you are saying that via this effort, you're going to take that, because I'm very glad to hear after reviewing all of this stuff ahead of the meeting, I was looking for that next, there's gonna be more finite, this is the direction, much more detail, and that's wonderful to hear, because this is great, it's very strategic, but it's not, here, this is how we're getting from A to B.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's, the event strategy is, I think we're on target. I think we all get that there's value to that. I think there's been a lot of discussion surrounding it, but I think we need to drive it all the way down to one event strategy. And I think that's where we're like, you know, now we're looking at our events one way and our community events another way. I would really like to see all of this wrapped up into one mission, one targeted goal, so that we know what dollars are allocated to it. Love the thought process of keeping some of those dollars in-house as we maybe enhance certain events, but I just think we need a lot more definition around that.
Any
I just wanna-
any recommendations?
Relative to,
The overall strategy, if you want to,
I mean, obviously, I'm very much on board with things that enhance the guest experience as well as things that drive room nights. Both are very, very important. They're critical. I just would like to see a lot more definition on these are the, like, help when we're all sitting around saying these are the events we need to do, like seeing what they have as a more defined strategy versus us trying to figure all of this out kind of on our own, if that makes sense. And so I think that's very encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to get all the way down to what you're talking about, really rethinking the criteria, right? So when we talk about resources and investment, what is that criteria? You just mentioned some of the things, the economic impact. How do we continue to tighten that up to a point? Oh, sorry. How do we keep, you know, sort of trying to work on tightening that up? So when it comes to this investment, we can all in this room go, yeah, that's the right place to invest.
Well, and I
Right.
think there's even a piece of it that is, okay, we know Songwriters is hugely successful. We know Wine Festival, we know, but what are other, it's almost like we've talked about bringing private enterprise in to do some of these things.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
can we reach out
No,
to
absolutely.
event planners and we say, we need something in this weekend? How do we get to them and say, hey, we're a great destination for you to look at for this event? And really start to kind of put ourselves in the position
Yeah.
to pick and choose.
Yep, and I think the beauty here too, and Scott's gonna mention this as we get into resource, the beauty here is we have resource that we can also bring to that discussion,
Okay,
which
We-
is
we
also
meaning-
important.
We meaning Walton County.
that's great.
That when he says we, it's
Yes.
the larger Walton County group.
Right, so
Sure.
that exists, so anyway, I think that's, you're absolutely.
Okay, I think that's it.
And I think one of the things that we recognize, and I want to be, again, over-index on this, is that the current process that you use for your event strategy has served this market very well. And this proposal isn't going to include something that says in 2026, your process is dramatically different. When we deliver a strategic plan, there's a process that goes through, because you can't just automatically say, we're changing, hope you love it. We recognize that there needs to be a really clear transition, and we'll be part of those recommendations. But that what we really believe is there's a new strategic direction that will demand a new process.
how do we collaborate and/or memorialize these recommendations or whatever would be helpful in accommodating you, Amy, and what we're trying to accomplish?
I think what I heard once I got here is that you're going to bring us back as we work through the next 90 days. Your opening was great for me because I'm like, we got to get way more specific. So I think what I'm hearing is that you're going to bring us back a more specific plan that talks more specifically to types of events, just a lot more detail, and I look forward to working through that process with them. But that's absolutely key, in my opinion, to making this something that's successful for us as we move.
So Commissioner, sorry, Amy.
Please, no.
Our commitment is that when we deliver that plan, we have basically a 3-month check back and a year check back. And in that plan, there will be deadlines and timeframes, and we will be able to meet with Matt, with the board, and say, okay, how's your progress on this? Why, this has been wildly successful, congratulations, or there hasn't been any movement, how can we help? So that's where the commitment is, to kind of keep this going. This isn't a hand it off and see you later and hope it works. So there will be timelines, there will be processes within the document that can be very, very manageable.
Great, and I'd like to appoint Ms. Coble-Wise kind of as a representative of the board and maybe having fluid discussions in the background so that we can, we can be very productive in what we're trying to accomplish. Anyone else? Commissioner Curry, you recognize.
I know we focus a lot of times on the south end of the county, and it looks like your priority area 3 may be more prudent for me to ask these questions, but what can we do, or do you have this in the workings of advertising that North Walton aspect? Because I think a lot of the talks that we have here kind of define South Walton, the beaches and all that stuff, and we use the word authentic Walton all the time, but what does that mean? What do the folks at the north end of the county going to expect out of the strategic plan? What's in it for them?
I think there's a lot, and I will say one of the most impactful community workshops we had when we were here 3 months ago was the North Walton community, and it was a insightful and very passionate exchange with what that opportunity is. And so I think there's 2 things you will see specifically in this plan. One is we think a lot of what has to happen in North Walton is more about destination development and product development than it is about marketing right now. We heard very clearly from the community that there's opportunities for concert series, art and culture events that just don't have the necessary support to get off the ground. So part of it, Commissioner Curry, is that we believe there has to be, item number 3, some real focused destination development. It's that old chicken and egg. Do you start marketing something, hoping people come, or do you start developing something and then marketing? We feel it's the latter. We feel that there really is an opportunity with the defined resources that are created by that district. And while they're not as substantive as the Southern District, they're nonetheless substantive. There are funds and resources to do that with. So we think some real creative opportunities around destination development, one of which relates to the event strategy, that there are core things that can happen in that north area that will be drivers. And so I think you'll see a lot of that in the plan, because it isn't just about marketing, you've got to have the product. And while there is product that exists, we believe some development of that product is really key to moving forward. Did I answer that sufficiently?
Thank you.
Okay, very welcome.
Some more details to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, today is to make sure we get this head nod that, okay, yeah, these were the right things, because we've got a lot. I mean, we could have just gone really granular today, but we didn't think that was well, it wasn't our commitment. Our commitment was to come back and do this with this board and then deliver that specificity.
Commissioner Johns, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. You mentioned family-friendly amenities. Do you have any specifics that you're talking about on that?
The week would share today, I would think a little bit of it will come back to what we're talking about right now. We think that there are some real opportunities to, during key times of year, whether that is peak season or off season, primarily peak in our estimation right now, to create not necessarily attractions, but opportunities for younger members of the family and families to gather. So while the 30A Festival is an example of one, we believe that there is content to be created in this market in key areas that will satiate some of that demand for family gatherings.
Okay,
There
so-
are some bricks and mortar that we would, I think, also suggest as things move forward, but we think it's really more about the kind of content that leverages existing facilities and existing opportunities with some real targeted content.
Okay, so you do think that you're talking about brick and mortar as well, some things that you're looking at down the road, facilities, things like that?
Yeah, I think one that will come up a little bit, but we're not going to over-index that day. There's been talk and there is some discussion about the current path forward with an art and cultural venue.
Mm-hmm.
We think that is, without a doubt, one of the biggest bricks and mortar opportunities in the community.
Okay,
And you won't hear anything about a sports complex. And we can go down that rabbit hole in a deeper conversation if you need to. But for the TDC organization and the funds that it creates, we think that the most important asset that could really bridge that gap would be a cultural art, performing art sort of a facility. That could have content that is, again, very family-oriented, but also satiates the larger audience.
absolutely, agree with you, thank you.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate your participation.
And those areas, again, where we see concentration come from really the work that was done on the resident survey, the SWOT analysis, the community engagement, we can come in with some preconceived ideas and see what other destinations do, but it was really driven home by the people we spoke with, that is a very large welcome mat in terms of a public, of a facility for the public. Okay, moving to priority area number 2. So while this one kind of highlights accessibility, it really is about strengthening infrastructure, and primarily the infrastructure we're talking about is the product that is world-class, world-renowned, and at the heart of so much of this experience, and that is the beach. And we heard very loud and clear through the resident survey, both residents, or excuse me, the public sentiment survey from residents and non-residents. Virtually every person we spoke to on the community and stakeholder engagement had some anecdote, story, point of view on traffic, congestion, parking, access, beach renourishment, all of that. And again, there is so much right with what's going on. There are so many resources that are already protected, already anticipatory to deal with this, but we think there's some real opportunity from a strategic perspective for the next 3 to 5 years to address some of the biggest hurdles that impede, at times, access and engagement, and just the joy of that beach. And we think this is, again, a very, very key priority.
And Brian, there's a lot of collaboration here in this priority. And it'd be great to get some of your thoughts here too, because this whole investment in beach renourishment or investment in transportation, we obviously want to do together in terms of how we think that through, so that instead of just saying there's a resource that's now available to beach renourishment, what's the priority there? How do we help kickstart things? I mean, how do we play an active role? So I don't know if you have quick thoughts on that, because we think that's an important part of sort of this priority. So I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but would love to kind of get your thoughts on this.
I appreciate the opportunity. You know,
Yeah.
the items that are on here are items that are already in motion.
Yeah.
We've been working on beach nourishment for 2 decades almost. Unfortunately, you know, we had a project that we thought was a good project. We couldn't get it to the finish line. We're still working on that project actively right now. There's different reasons for it. Obviously, the primary reason is hurricane storm damage reduction. Protect the upland properties that create the tax bases, reduce the federal involvement after a storm. And then other reasons for it as well. Everybody understands customary use. We'll get into that. Transportation system, we're going to roll out a very abbreviated program in March I mean, I'll be honest with you, we've been putting it together. We think we have a good idea. We've worked through what we believe are hiccups, but we don't know until we start rolling the buses.
Yeah.
And we can gauge participation and see if it works. Previous county commissions and councils appropriated money for it. We're putting the money to use.
Yeah.
Our vision is a public transportation, a traditional public transportation system that moves people east and west. The initial offering will be to beach accesses from centralized parking. The goal is to then create stops along the way that makes sense. Resort communities, entertainment districts, obviously beach accesses, stuff like that. The 2 main ills we're trying to cure is congestion on the scenic corridors and the hunt for the parking place that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
A personal or selfish goal is to stop people from the haphazard parking that degrades or destroys our public road right-of-ways.
Yeah.
Beach Ops Group has been in charge of that, ever since I got here 11 years ago. And so we take great pride in it. It's part of what I call that polishing of the apple.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people that like to come here. They pay great sums of money to come here. They enjoy coming here. I believe that we, the county, could do a better job in, what I call a more polished apple that does one goal. It says, hey, well, I want to go back to South Walton.
Right.
Those folks got it going on. We really enjoy it. So.
Right, and I think there's a real, we think, all of us think there's a real opportunity, and I know we collaborate already, but to even go further
There is.
on how we look at the visitor experience together, you know, sort of, and we want to make sure that's an outcome here.
Yeah.
That you're also going, yeah, that's, you know, part of the whole point of tell us the real steps here is we want to work with you on, as an outcome here, what some of those key steps are too.
So we'll work together as we move forward this next 90 days, and new Beach Ops Director Josh Irvin will be instrumental in that too.
You know, that'll be great.
Yeah.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've given him the reins.
And again, we recognize there are so many good things going on right now, and part of the opportunity that lies in the strategic plan, one that is a public document, is it also is a real way to share the positiveness, the positive aspect of polishing that apple. So I think some of this is going to be really a strong message to the community that we heard through the resident survey. They need some more information. They need to kind of better understand it, which I think would be really real positive. The two other areas that I think we recognize through our work that we feel are an important part of an infrastructure conversation. You see on this list the culture event venue. That is, we think, a really important piece of infrastructure. That again, already great work. There's land acquired. There's a lot of things that now let's really take the engagement, the product, and the resources, and let's set a strategy for the next few years. And the scenic corridor, the aesthetics of the scenic corridor is one that we heard a lot about. Traffic and congestion was without a doubt the highest issue that we came across, but also how do we ensure that corridor remains so scenic and again, not degraded in ways that are unintentional, but maybe sometimes also intentional. And setting the strategy to have that be a real key driver for the decisions and the engagement around 38. And again, not trying to say that we think all transportation issues within the county are solved by 30A or are the responsibility of the TDC. We feel from our work, this is because of the work that has been done, the most efficient place to start and to really lay out a strategy. But there are a lot of opportunities for public transportation beyond the discussion that we're advocating for. Chair, check in again with questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Okay. You were talking about the scenic corridor. We have, a couple of years ago, included that in our land development code to require the design review board to oversee that. We haven't implemented that yet, and right now with SB 180, we're hoping that's going to revert back to the way it was, and that we'll be able to have those opportunities again. But that is a desire for the board to make sure that we do have those standards all along 30A and Scenic 98.
And we would love it, if it's appropriate, to have the expression of all of that in the strategic plan that we deliver.
Absolutely.
That would be referencing the land use, referencing the Bill 180 or the
SB 180,
SB 180.
yes, that's right.
Those things we believe would be really important to have in the document so that they are part of the strategy because they are going to be impactful.
Absolutely. I'm happy to work with you.
Great.
Thank you.
And I think one thing, and I know Brian's saying polishing the apple, which I totally agree, but I think for me, we are inflating the South Walton brand by all of the great work that Beach Ops has done, by all of the new transportation. Grayton is as efficient to jump on that shuttle, get down to Grayton, get back. So we really are, I think, moving the needle here. And I agree, obviously, we all agree that we've got work to do. But I think, too, when I think about, like, I understand that we have residents that are not happy about Legion Park and some other areas that we plan to enhance. But at the end of the day, I just want to kind of go on record as saying, like, if the TDC, or excuse me, not the TDC, if bed tax dollars are going to fund it and we own it, then we have to raise the facility to the brand that the expectation has now been set to. And so there's going to be some times where I think residents don't necessarily agree with us, but at the end of the day, then the county needs to buy it or their HOA needs to buy it. But if you're part of Visit South Walton and the South Walton brand, the facility has to match that expectation. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I mean, this really, if you think about it, Brian, the whole collaboration there is, if you think about the two teams, the goal there is on all the notion of visitor lens, experiential branding, that we on the tourism side need to be a key partner there. You know, really saying this is what we believe that looks like together. So I think this is a great point to make sure we talk about here. Because you know, we actually talked several years ago about this same subject of how do we really integrate the experiential side of what everybody's doing. Is I think what you're talking about there, you know.
Absolutely, and I think even, and I told Brian this, I think even the architecture that we've used in these new facilities, I mean, it's so complementary to what 30A is all about when you look at Alice Beach and Seaside and Rosemary. So now you're seeing the Walton County facilities come up to a level where when the guest walks up to this beach access or this parking facility, they're like, wow, this is South Walton, not South Walton, it's Walton County. Y'all know I'm not trying to be South End, North End by my comments. But we've just elevated, and we've got to now stay committed to that elevation that we've come up to.
Speaking of that, we had the grand opening, the ribbon cutting on the 393 parking lot and the facility there, and it's really very, very nice.
Yeah. And again, we couldn't agree more, Amy. We couldn't agree more that having this ability to articulate this standard and this vision is important, and impacts will beyond just the single project that's being decided or discussed to impact product overall. And we do think as we move into priority area number 3, that destination development and environmental resilience, and when we use the word environmental resilience, this is really talking about protecting the natural environment that is so integral to this experience. This is about how you have a long-term strategy to keep the resiliency within the beach and the entire county alive and well. So this is also where this is a big area. It's one of 5 priorities, but it is one where we'll likely have the most strategic shift or the most strategic evolution in the way currently Walton County Tourism operates. Because it is, as we think, and as we have heard, one of the core elements of this is how you take these priorities and develop a strategy and then manage that strategy. That takes time, resources, and again, we feel it's all there. The right people with the right knowledge, with the right resources to really have impact in so many of these things. The idea of which one of these elements in destination development takes priority is there's still a lot of work to do here. But I think every one of the things we've actually talked about today on some level in our terminology relates back to destination development. Articulating standards, raising the total appearance of the product, air development, cultural art venues, all of those things at some level have to have a catalyst and or a convener. And we think there's a really strong role for the organization that Matt leads and the board of the TDC to really be a catalyst and a convener in ways that drive the product forward. And there's, again, a wonderful combination of people, product, and places to make that happen. And the resources that are there are substantive and can really be used strategically. And as you will hear as we get further into the rest of the agenda today, there's a lot of resources right now that are on the sideline. And we think this concept of destination development can really move those resources from the sideline to really be part of the future strategy and deliver on a lot of the things that we're going to return back with timelines and timetables and budgets. So some of these key areas, again, route planning, working very closely with the airports to really leverage and build a stronger lift, is what we call it, a stronger number of seats into this market from some of your most important markets. We've talked a lot with people, and Tim's one of them, that there is a lack of service from the Florida market into this market, and we think there's a real opportunity there. You've got great relations with the board at ECP, with Matt there, and an opportunity now with the airlines are in a place where they are growing and looking at regional service, and there's some really good people that do this. They do this for a living. They do route development. They can be engaged and help you develop a strategy, just like we're doing for the overall strategy of the destination. There are resources to do that at the air service level.
So if you're Delta Airlines or Allegiant or American, and your business development team tells you that, hey, there's a opportunity market down in Walton County, Panama City, Okaloosa, that area, BPS, ECP, when they decide that, hey, we want to step down in there and ramp up what we have going and open up things with different cities, how does that work? Who do they reach out to within our resource infrastructure to say, hey, we're interested, here's what we need from you? Like, how do they communicate that, and then what is it that we offer them?
Let me start, and I know we both have a lot of experience in route development. Both of us have worked in markets where it's been really key. There's not one answer that works with every organization because they all tend to operate differently. I think first and foremost, the people they reach out to is the airport, because cost of the gate service, fee service, all the structures at the airport are part of those decisions. So a lot of times they start there because they already have service there. They already understand what that is. They look at, are there gates available that we can bring more flights in? That's probably the first place to go. A lot of times people will then reach out to an economic development entity to find out what the local economy is going to drive in terms of seats, the in-market economy. So what the beaches of South Walton, what the entire area here is going to drive in terms of demand for tickets. And then they look at their route planning and they can say, yeah, there is obviously a lack of service or seats between these two areas. And then the route planners look and say, well, here's how they're doing it now. They're going Atlanta, Salt Lake, Atlanta, ECP. And they can look and say, well, how can we make that route different? And then they look at the same thing regionally. Where are there opportunities to grow? Because it is about a business decision. So from my perspective, it's first and foremost at the airport, then they reach out to the community to find about the demand drivers, and a lot of times that might be Matt. They might reach out to Matt and say, what are the visitation levels for the last 3 years in Walton County? Or they will ask for outside validation of the ability to drive more demand.
I just want to add one piece here. So that's one track is when we have an inquiry. So the airline makes an inquiry. The other track is when we work with the airports and we say, we to collectively say, what do we want? What routes do we think are going to be important? And then where the difference here is, instead of the tourism industry or us just going, okay, well, we'll wait to hear if some airline has interest, we work with the airport and say, we really think there's a market coming from wherever to here. We have data to support that because we know the mix of our visitors. We have things that can support the argument. We go with the airport to that airlines that we want to talk to about a flight or about, can we get a direct route from here? So this is also the step of what occurs when we have an inquiry, but also how do we determine what we think some of those priorities are together, and then what resources can we bring? And we have seen, and we're not advocating that this is a huge amount, we've seen tourism dollars involved in incentivizing airlines. And we're not necessarily advocating for that directly, but we've seen that kind of dynamic as a way to get routes sort of started. So those are the kind of things that are tangible that we want to make, sort of your point about what's different about this plan, is we want to have specific steps here that can be taken, as opposed to saying, we'll sit and wait, and then when they come to us, then we'll try to be helpful. We're trying to think of ways we can be proactive here in this.
If we were to incentivize that, how does that happen? Who's able to make those pitches?
There's a couple ways that incentives are delivered. One, you can reduce the cost per ticket, and that's just every time a seat is sold, there's a reimbursement that's delivered by an entity.
But is that a conversation that Matt's having with the airline, or you're having?
We wouldn't be having it. We would advocate it'd be a Matt, but it'd be a part of an overall strategy from the community, so you can understand from a community level, where that impact's going to come from. But it can be there are communities that use sales tax to do that. There are communities that use boutique taxes, i.e. lodging tax, to do that. There are people that use a myriad of opportunities to reduce the price of the ticket or increase the profitability of the airline. That's probably the better way to say that. You can also do it by incentivizing the launch of an airline. So in 2 markets I worked in, our contribution to the incentives was we paid for the advertising for a year of the launch of the 2 new routes. In the market. So from Seattle to Salt Lake with Alaska Airlines, we did all the promotion in Seattle for the route Seattle to Salt Lake.
Okay, I'm good.
Chairman, part of that equation too is Matt sits on the ECP board. They reserve a seat for us. Traditionally, the director of tourism sits on it.
And I think what we are advocating for is a proactive strategy. We were responding to the question about what happens when an inquiry comes in, but we think because of all the information, for instance, that Kelly has from your agency, you can develop a packet along with someone who understands route planning or understands the lift situation, and almost like a sales opportunity, go and present this in a way that's really cohesive and shows a really, really strong opportunity for demand and growth.
Let's keep going.
Keep going. Okay, move on to priority number 4.
Yeah, you're recognized.
Okay, I'm would have never taken advanced destination development and environmental resilience to airlift. As an example, are there any other like finite examples under that one that I really on that one was kind of like, okay, I'm not sure I understand. So can you elaborate on maybe another specific example outside of airlift that would fall under that category?
In terms of, because when we use the term of art, advanced destination development, this means taking destination development to the next level. So
Okay.
not just talking about, is there a need for a hotel, and we're gonna respond to a hotel developer with some pro forma information and average daily rate information to kind of add onto what would be considered a development opportunity destination. This is about really product enhancement, brand recognition, building the opportunity. So from our perspective, a cultural venue would be part of that. So infrastructure, it was priority number 2, but it clearly fits in with priority number 3, that our destination development strategy would include the advocacy and the opportunity to develop a cultural art venue. Other areas of destination development that we think would be really important, integration with economic development, integration in one key area or many key areas where the regulatory environment of the county government and the delivery of the service. So let's talk about short-term rental applications. That would be a key area for us for destination development, and getting engaged in those processes that make it easier to do business and have more opportunity to increase revenue in the destination. Product enhancement, we also think, Amy, is part of that. How you can look at going out and making outreaches to the community and say, here's the level where Walton has evolved to. How do you get a lot more people at that level? That to us is a really key opportunity destination development.
Okay, yeah.
In the meeting, I'm going to use a North example. In our North discussion, we had the focus group. We had members of the public sector there too from that area, and they talked about some aspirations they had. So the difference here is, instead of us saying, okay, great, we'll kind of keep us posted, is really us going, well, how do we get involved here? How do we help you, truly help you? Try to move those initiatives forward. Could be advocacy, could be resource, could be talent that they need to help them move it forward. So it's more than saying, we'll sort of wait to see, and if you need something, call us. It's really looking at how we can get involved and keep this committee informed of all that too. As part of reporting out would be to say, here's some of those projects and how are we making progress on those projects as part of our ongoing reporting.
Okay.
One of my favorite projects I've ever been involved in destination development is about destination calendaring.
I'm sorry, destination.
Calendaring.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Having a absolute strategy that delivers a calendar that is beyond any sort of passive aggregation of content. And again, there are really smart people in this room. There are resources available to go out and I think set a new standard for what a destination organization can do in regards to calendaring. And you could say that's marketing on some level. I say you've got to have the calendar before you market it. So then how that calendar relates to an SEO strategy, to all the things that happen with the way people look for things to do. Number one search term in our industry is things to do. That, I think, is an opportunity because of the scale and the continuity in this community. That there's a real opportunity there.
Yeah, and we used to call it, the guest clock. Like, what is your guest doing at every point during every given day? So what you would be saying is, you would literally take a calendar and say, this is how we're driving business into this county at every given point. I like that conceptually very, very much. So I just didn't quite understand the heading related to all the things we're talking about. It's fine, I just wanted to better understand.
So the idea of community engagement, getting a little bit granular here, but to us, that's again, this advanced destination development, is when you are engaged at a level with the community, because at some point, I think I've said this before, Matt and team own no product and manage no product. They're a reflection of what the community does. They're a reflection of what the community chooses to do, and lucky as hell that they have this incredible beach to market and all of those things, right? At some level, that deepening of the community engagement strategy and being more connected with the art and culture community, more connected with the rest, all those aspects that make up that destination, there is a real opportunity, again, because of the scope and scale and the resources, to take that to the next level in this community, we believe. But it, again, is a strategic decision to not say it's only sales and marketing, that there is an opportunity through community engagement to enhance all that, to increase length of stay, to increase visitor retention, to all those things by having product involvement and product evolution.
Chair.
Okay, number 4, governance, workforce.
Hold
and
on just a
community-
second.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, I just
No.
want to piggyback a little bit, because every time you bring up the north, my wheels start turning. When you say development first, when you're talking about up north, we don't have an open checkbook like the South has. So we need to, what are some of the options that you foresee that could minimize the expense but optimize the attendance? What art, I heard you talk about arts, you know, without building Disney World up there, what are some of the details or something that we could look forward to?
Well, I would first say that the scale of North Walton would not demand a Disney. That's good. That's the good part about that, right?
Before anybody says, I did not say bring Disney World to the north end of the county. So,
I will say personally, and I'm going to let Dan respond to this as well, my time here has been influenced in many ways. I have sensed a lot of really important trends here, or rhythms, and one of them is music. There is a connection in this community music. I'm not sure how far back it goes. I can go back to when 30A started, and I can go back to things I've read about, now I've been exposed to. But to me, there's an element that is already connected to this region of the country that has an opportunity, if developed correctly in North Walton, to be impactful. And it could start out to be a Monday night concert series in XYZ venue. It could start out like South by Southwest started, where restaurants and bars give up free space to musicians who are programmed and paid to be in their space. But to me, that seems to be, Commissioner Curry, the most relevant opportunity to really look at right now is how you can take something like music and make it more relevant by having a program development strategy around it that makes sure that there's product there, their people are compensated to deliver that product, and then you market that and grow that. The next outcome could be live theater, could be aspects of the art and culture community that have at some level a connection to North Walton.
they do have a nice spot, an amphitheater up there on the lake that is a great possibility for all this. I just didn't know if you said you sat down with some of the folks up north. What were some of their suggestions? Were they some of the similar that you
Yeah,
guys
They were,
said?
and here's what our sense was, a lot of good energy, by the way,
Yeah.
but same thing, resource. So they were struggling on the resource side. And so again, how do we get involved? We look at those resource questions and say, is it public-private? Are there some resources that we bring for purposes of kickstarting something? So if we wanted to see a new concert series, do we say, okay, so we'll take a little of investment there to take some risk on some, early performances to sort of get things moving? Those are all kind of tangible pieces, again, versus saying, we're just here to help you, and when you do find out whatever, we can tell the world about it. We're talking about getting involved at the ground level to try to figure out how to move those things forward. And that, to Scott's point, that's a shift. It's an important shift in terms of, this organization and getting involved at that level. But we think it's the key. We think that if essentially all we're doing is quote-unquote marketing only, and I'm oversimplifying here for a moment, then we're gonna be sitting here staring at the same situation 10 years from now. So how do we make that shift and start to move some of those things forward?
I'd just like to see something on paper to where we can say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. This is who we contact. 2 weeks from now, let's have a meeting.
Yeah.
When's the concert start? Some of those questions. A lot of times we speak in generalities, and it just keeps getting kicked down the road. So, I would like to see something actually happen up north, to be honest with you.
Perfect.
Kelly and Todd Meisner, I would say, Commissioner, you should appoint them the head of that committee. When we had our meeting with them, they had a plethora of ideas and opportunities, and these are people who are in Defuniak Springs intentionally and have a strong commitment to the community and want to be a part of that and want to stay successful. And a lot of what informed us was sitting down with them and then getting validation of that. And you will see in our report just that, Commissioner. It will say, research a concert series in Defuniak Springs beginning these months, work on this, here's the proposed budget for that. And all of these things, Commissioner, again, we want to over-index, that there are resources to make this happen. This isn't about taking money from another fund to not do something in order to do this. There are funds that are available to help jumpstart these concepts.
Commissioner Gladwin.
I would just say that there is an appetite in the north, and I would say that there are processes in place to do that. This weekend, we had a 3-day Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Collaboration between the TDC, Main Street, the city, and the theater there in the Funiac sold out 3 nights. And all the restaurants did big business. And it was a big, and then the Main Street had the Mistletoe Market and the Farmers Market. All those things together produced a very nice event in freezing cold rain. So if it can be done in freezing cold rain, it can be done elsewhere. But there are already things in place that will work if we just give them a little fertilizer.
That's great.
And again, I hope you've heard from us, we feel there's a lot of already momentum here to move these things forward. And what's harder is when there is none of that. And you're talking about out of nowhere just doing a strategy or doing something that doesn't really already have some level of momentum. But again, the idea of how you can take these as catalysts and build on them and build more product for people to do that more times.
Commissioner Johns.
I just wanted to mention, and Commissioner Glidewell, you may know this better than I, but there is a series up in the North End where I believe Tim Jackson does the storytelling, and I think that's very successful. He's phenomenal, and he brings in a lot of different musicians. So to be able to help with that too may be
Absolutely.
Yeah. And they,
beneficial.
the Meisners called out that experience and recognized that they need help.
Right,
They can get bigger and more impactful with the right kind of strategic help.
Councilman
absolutely.
Conyers.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll echo what Commissioner Glidewell was saying earlier. There's definitely an appetite for enhancement of some of this infrastructure that we're talking about there and developing that. The lake is the centerpiece for the Phoenix Springs, and we hear it time and time again. The Phoenix got that hallmark type atmosphere, especially in time back to what you were saying with calendar. This time of the year is that hallmark experience for us. So this is that look and that feel that everybody gets during those seasons. And there's definitely an appetite from the council to move forward renovations and restoration of that amphitheater, to put that focus down there for arts and music and different things. It's just the biggest challenges we face are funding and trying to move that forward. So there's definitely an appetite within the community, the local businesses, and the public in seeing that develop. So thank you.
All right, let's move to number 4.
Okay. A lot of this we've talked about, so this is really, again, that increased opportunity for community engagement and really having a dedicated and focused strategy on how you can take all the work of mainly these 2 bodies and Matt's and the Walton County Tourism Organization and be more strategically aligned. That's, we think, is a top priority here. There's a lot of great work done. We think that there's more opportunities for this type of conversation that can be really impactful in terms of not just delivery of product, but ensuring the strategy makes sense. Number 4 is on some level the
Hold
way
on just
that
a second.
everything, yes.
I apologize.
Ms. Wisecope, you're recognized.
I just wanted to very quickly, I agree with what everybody has said, and I think a couple of things we need to keep in the forefront of our mind is how much more accessible to jump on a 4-lane now than like people have got to change their mindset, and I think we have to work with them on changing that mindset. It's a hop and a skip. I think secondly, and I'm kind of one of those, like when I really think about, dream big, but this is a strategic plan. So I just think we need to leave it out there that I would like to put this out there, that when I think about how do you move beach guests closer and closer and closer to North Walton, I'm going to continue to put on record that if we had a marina, that we could really open these rivers up and they see the beauty of the rivers, and then they're going to go, maybe we want to go to the springs one day. And you kind of like take them slowly from this end of the county to the Hallmark area. I think there's merit to that thought process, and I just wanted to put that on record. Thank you, Commissioner Drake.
Right.
And I hope you will see also, Amy, in the plan that part of the strategy is how do you continue ideation? How do you continue to have the conversations? And again, to us, that comes back to the idea of community engagement. How do you have a structured interaction so those ideas that you have aren't lost at some point and come up once every 3 years when the strategic plan is done? Okay. With that, then, Commissioner, on to priority number 5.
Did you skip 4 or did you do 4?
No, we kind of went through 4 kind of quickly.
All right, let's go to 5.
I think I had it up by minute, I made the transition very well, so go to number 5. Clearly, one of the most impactful and important parts of the Walton County Tourism Organization is the sales and marketing. So our ask and our deliverable in this project was to really do an assessment of the digital assets and the digital sort of scope and scale of what's there, which is what you'll see as you go through this priority, that we feel there are some real opportunities to enhance what has been done and move towards some tactics that align more with where the destination is now, again, having been built through a very successful process and very successful planning, to leverage where you are now in some really key ways. And those relate to the 4 areas that we have defined: brand storytelling, email marketing, segmentation, and new website priorities. And so in those recommendations, we have some really, I think, substantive recommendations that are not whole-scale 180-degree changes from what's going on. It's further refinement, but it is also expanding. And I'm just going to talk specifically about one and then leave it to Dan to talk about one that he's the most passionate about. Knowing the makeup of the organization, the makeup of the guests, and the primary focus of the organization, we believe that there is a really substantive opportunity for email marketing. And not the traditional email marketing where Matt sends an email to somebody, but that's really thoughtful, that is collaborative, and that really connects to some real big opportunities about increasing length of stay, maintaining your current market, and growing your market. And that while email can be passive, it is still, in terms of speaking to a repeat guest or a known guest, is still the most effective way to do that. Someone you already have a relationship with is the most effective way to do that. I think where we see a huge opportunity is right now, Walton County Tourism is, in a sense, 1 or 2 steps removed from the actual guest. They don't have a lot of the same information that Tim has. Tim also has a competitive relationship to that information. But we feel there are some really creative opportunities to take Walton County Tourism as a catalyst and develop opportunities where Tim is going to have an opportunity to market to his database, his clients, with a message and an engagement from Walton County Tourism that expands the ability to grow and offers you a real benefit by doing that. It doesn't say Tim gives his list to the team at Walton County Tourism, because we recognize that's a marketing asset, and that's a business asset for Tim. But we think there's an opportunity to take through some really creative opportunities and develop a stronger message that is more cohesive and represents the brand stronger and drives everybody. In a sense, rises the tide for everybody.
Yeah, I just want to mention bullet point 3 here, segmentation. We did talk about this last time, but I just want to reinforce this, that, for example, Commissioner Curry, when we talk about the north area of the county, everything we talk about, so whether it was concert series or events, there is a very specific segmented marketing strategy to get to the audiences that we want to get to. So to move the needle, and there's a lot of great work going on, so I don't want this to be viewed as if we're not doing it. What we're saying is, how do we refine our approach to key segments? So if we know that that audience for that North County performance is so-and-so, let's get right to that person. And I also want to say something about the bed tax collector. So in all of this conversation, we've had great discussions about different areas within the bed tax collectors and who they're going after. Whether it's that highly affluent, high-end, week-long, high-priced, private beach, all the sort of, that's a market. To that other market that comes here, rents homes, stays here for a week, but could be very different in terms of who we're trying to target. So the continued evolution of how we reach those markets very specifically and learn from those, work with the bed tax collectors and say, okay, here's the knowledge we're gaining. So just using Tim as an example, in his inventory, I don't know, Tim, if I'm right here, but there could be 3 or 4 markets within his broader inventory in terms of who we're trying to reach. And Tim and I were just talking about this, that the idea of going, and we don't do this, so I don't want you to misunderstand my comment, but the idea of just doing a generic raise awareness type ad isn't that helpful in some cases, versus we know who that audience is for that different type of accommodation or different type of experience. So there's been a lot of good discussion, by the way, internally with the team too about this. And so we want to be able to come out with a way where the board can go, how exactly are we targeting here? And how do we know if that targeting has been successful, and what do we learn in that targeting about that particular sort of segment, if you will, that we're trying to reach?
And I don't want to scare Brian, but there's an element of all these priorities to come together, is that as you launch the bus service on 30A, that's an important message for a lot of people who have been here. And how, through this interconnected ecosystem that we're strengthening through this strategy, how that becomes a key integral part of the email messaging. And we really work with, again, Amy, Tim, and others to integrate that into the strategy. So it becomes part of our collective voice, not just a voice from Walton County Tourism.
Chair.
Do you recognize?
I like everything you just said, but I think the key word would be consistency. Once we find that, Nick, we got to stay with it. We can't go full on for a month or two, and then all of a sudden, 6 months later, we're recreating the wheel on something else. I think consistency is key. I just want to say that.
Right.
And that is, again, a core component of what you have. Your main project is a very consistent product, and the product to be developed in Walton County and North Walton County, we think should meet that criteria of consistency. It can't be, let's do a concert series on Monday in June and then nothing. It needs to be one that has the ability to make an impact and be an ongoing part of the product, not just a one-off. And I will say that in the opportunities that are expressed in this much larger context of a digital marketing experience, there are nonetheless, however, some real key moments of opportunity to take and jump on that aren't a change in market, but one of the elements of this plan is some brand storytelling that relates much more to the execution of the Walton County Tourism Organization rather than an outsourced relationship that allows you to be a little bit more have a bigger opportunity to capture some of those moments of brilliance that happen in a destination that can and should be told within a very, very short time of happening. And again, these are not all viral videos of something positive or something negative, but they are opportunities to talk about something in a real organic way that's happening in a short time that has real impact to drive brand. And we think that's a real important part of a consistent strategy for always finding those moments of brilliance.
And I want to just add one thing. I think as we look at all of the fantastic improvements, because Matt, we started this exercise together and really never finished, but looking at the number of parking places that we have added and really tracking that, and how do you turn that into positive messaging that offsets this whole private beach that got on our back with social media especially, that I understand we're currently doing all that we can, but I think we need some very creative messaging around the positives of the beach, the accessibility that we have. I think some real focused efforts on that would be impactful.
That's great.
Anything else?
Those are the priorities. So I think we have sensed some consensus in what we presented. So I think that was the real goal today with this part of the discussion. So I think we feel really good about that. And so we can't wait to come back again in March and with a level of specificity that we will build with committee chairs like Amy and others and Brian and the engagement of Matt and the whole team to really bring that idea of the specificity and timelines. So the next part about today, I'm going to pop through this fairly quickly, is the reserve policy. So again, have done a lot of work with Matt, with Brian, and with others. And so what we are here to present today is sort of a state of the state, a recap of what we see and where we see the huge opportunities. There is an absolute connection between the opportunity that exists in the reserve policy and the 5 priorities we just talked about. When we talked about the ability of that third pillar, that idea of resources, those resources are primarily right now part of the reserve that has been very thoughtfully created, but is in large measure sitting on the sidelines. So the idea of having priority areas for future investment, 3 of them, beach renourishment, destination development and infrastructure, and then traffic mitigation and mobility solutions. We think those are the top priorities for the use of the reserve funds. I think I had this one out of order. So this is where the reserves currently stand as of November 2024. In our final report, we will have through November 2025. We just don't have them yet by timing and completion of that. So these numbers will change slightly. But you have 5 buckets, as we talked about previously, and within those total buckets right now, the reserves are at $151 million. There are encumbrances of $50.8 million. There's a beach renourishment strategy that is currently around 60.8 million. So leaves a net available after the current encumbrances and the beach renourishment of $40.8 million, $40.6 million for future consideration to relate to the strategic objectives and the priorities for the next, we're calling it, 5 years. Doing some work with Brian and Matt, there are funds that are currently on this, in these buckets that are encumbered that need some further discussion. There's some projects that have been there a while that may or may not still be relevant. So one of the, I think, key recommendations that will come is that there is a really defined process, whether that is a committee, a subcommittee, or agenda item of the TDC to really review the current encumbrances and really decide where those are. There's two things that came up in the discussions that I think are really important that we articulate them. One is that the beach renourishment program is a very defined process. 1% annually is the commitment. We couldn't agree more. We think it's a very impactful strategy, and that we believe that the current reserves in there are adequate, but clearly will have opportunities to grow and be more relevant, because the evolution of that relationship to the beach currently right now is primarily about a renourishment program. We've talked and heard throughout the process of our time here, there may be land acquisition, there may be a lot of other strategies that relate to that idea of protecting the product, and how that resource grows and becomes more impactful, we think is, without a doubt, it was our number one priority, and it is in terms of resources here. The second one is that there's always opportunities for costs to increase. And so part of the way the strategy has been developed with the encumbrances is to protect against not having enough money in the bank when a project is coming to completion. So we think, Brian, that also needs to be a really core part of this. Questions on the current state of the reserves?
Yeah, you recognize.
So, just so we understand each other, you said that our current level of reserves is adequate, correct?
For the beach renourishment program, everything we have researched, the beach renourishment program, your level of reserves are very, very proactive and very substantive. It's hard to say with a lot of specificity adequate, because there's a lot of things we don't know about what's going to happen with disaster relief funding. But yes, we feel right now the strategy is very supportable, defendable, and very accurate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The rest of the funds, we think you have more resources and reserves than you need as a destination, and some of these resources should be pulled off of the sidelines and put to action. So I want to make sure I address that correctly, Commissioner Gladwell, that we don't view it as adequate. We view a lot of your reserves as not serving the community right now.
Maybe excessive?
There's an opportunity. Clearly, there's an opportunity. Yeah. But again, there's been a lot of volatility in the tourism industry, so we're not criticizing at all the level of where the reserves have been built or the strategy that has put you here. There are many, many destinations that could benefit from the reality that you have created. But we think now is the time, again, because of everything that's happening, to really put these into action and make them pay off.
I just think to add one comment, I know we're coming to the end, but we wanted to put this out there because we know there's going to be a lot of thought in the real kind of detail here of what's proposed going forward. But we do think, to Scott's point, what we think is there's a real opportunity here. And there was a lot of comments today about the how. And what we're suggesting is let's strategically look at this opportunity to use this as part of the how. And do it together. Obviously do it, with the steering committee, with the commission, with everybody. But again, because remember, we have history here, and we remember talking about this a few years ago. And what happens oftentimes is everybody, again, thinks, well, let's keep kind of holding it there while we do our thing. And to some degree, there could be opportunity that's sort of sitting here, literally, that we could come up with a plan together and say, where do we invest? How do we do it together? So there's back to the how a little bit here, that we really do have a way to move some of these things forward. And we're not here today to talk about exactly how all this. When we come back, we were going to have more thoughts here about some specific hows. But we just today wanted to recognize the fact that there is this opportunity that we think everybody should say makes sense to look at where the possibilities are.
Mr. Chair.
You recognize.
So, basically, the level of reserves is a product of a happenstance called COVID. No one anticipated our revenues going from 30 to 60 in a year. Nobody anticipated that. If you had suggested that was a possibility, they would have put you in a mental ward. So, there was a lot of negative out of COVID, but this was a positive. And so I think the goal is to take these positives and use them in a way that jumpstarts us to the next level.
Yep.
Because the goal here is to put money in people's pockets. So, I mean, the whole reason TDC exists is to put money into the tourist industry's pockets. And that's a laudable goal because 70% of our economy comes from that. But we want to make sure that that 70% continues to grow and that we do the right thing with that money. We don't want to waste it. So I think it's important to understand this was God's grace gave us this money, and we just need to make sure it's used correctly. And
You should also pat yourselves on the back collectively to say that you didn't do what a lot of people did and just spent it anyway. That was also a real foundational element to how you operate, which we think we're trying to reflect in the future strategy. So on this, right now, there's some key areas in red. And these are areas where we think take off on that foundation of making sure you do have reserves and making sure that you have the ability to have future resources. So in our report, we are advocating that there is an annual reserve target level for each of these strategies. And the annual reserve starts with what we're referring to as an annual operational reserve for the DMO of $15 million, which basically relates to half of the budget. That's what we're proposing. That there could be, that's for discussion. Our proposal is that you keep an annual reserve of roughly 50% of the operating budget so that you have the ability to react when there is a natural disaster, like an oil spill that gives you resources, that you have the ability to act in case of another downturn or elements of this that become, again, foundational to your strategy to be conservative and be aware of what moves forward. That in the beach area, that there is, again, an ongoing commitment of the current balance that's there, but a 1% annual appropriation that keeps that fund growing and keeps it relevant. In the destination development side, we think an annual, a minimum reserve balance should always be of $5 million in the destination development. In our recommendation, there's $20 million in there right now. So there's $15 million to work with in the destination development over the next 5 years to really impact the community and grow the impact of the visitor economy. And then in the traffic, mobility, and accessibility and congestion one, we think that a minimum balance of that reserve should always be $15 million. So that's always in that strategy is $15 million, which then leaves you $40 million right now to address the priorities that come from the strategy discussions that we've just had, and we'll have again in March.
Gotcha. All
We
right,
also have the
let's-
same
let's-
level for Walton. We have the same recommendations for the tourism district, the taxi district that is North Walton.
Let's bring this thing in for a landing.
Okay.
Do you have any final remarks?
I just want to say one thing, I'll turn it over to Scott, just to reiterate our commitment to what everybody has talked about today, and that's the commitment to come back with more detail and really take what we talked about today and be able to sit here when we next come together and really look at some of those specifics and make sure from the commission's perspective, from everybody's perspective, they feel comfortable with that level of detail. So just so you know, we want to make sure that we get this to a point that everybody's comfortable. And I just want to say one thing about the reserve piece, Mr. Chair, and see if you agree. We know this is it's an important area, and there may be a subcommittee that delves into this even deeper, if need be, to really make sure we've looked at balances and all of the things we're talking about. But holistically, we think there's a real opportunity here.
I would say landed with thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let's move to tab 2, possible 2026 dates for quarterly joint BCC, TDC meetings. Mr. Kellenberger, you're recognized.
Apologize for being a guest on the phone.
All right, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. Perfect. So as we kind of discussed after the last joint workshop, there was a desire for this group to get together more often. I think where we landed was on a quarterly basis. So I think ideally what we'd like to kind of narrow in on today is, you know, how we want that to look, and also, you know, what we want the, you know, the intent of those meetings to be, right? Let's meet with a purpose, and let's not just meet just to meet. So, you know, understanding the schedule that you all have and the schedule that the council has as well, you know, we think, you know, is there an opportunity, understanding the council will meet bi-monthly, to look at scheduling the quarterly joint workshops in those months where the council does not have a regularly scheduled meeting. So currently, they're slated to meet February, April, June, August, October, December. So we think maybe in those months between, that's where we can kind of look for those opportunities to have the joint workshops.
To recognize.
I'd like to add that I think that we need to do it on a day that we do not have a BCC meeting.
Agreed.
And I think, for me, excuse me, I think the purpose really is what we're doing here today. I think that there's a real genuine desire from all of us to oversee this strategic plan and oversee it responsibly. And so to me, the why is we're gonna look at this once a quarter and how we're doing and what we're doing and what improvements we've made. That's my thought.
By the way, I just want to say that that was a great presentation by them
Good
and
job.
very, very helpful.
So where does that put us? What are we gonna do?
So I think what we can do is, if we understand the general direction is to look in those off months, Brian and I can kind of work together with schedules and bring some proposed dates to share with you all.
Do you wanna, in your, periodic meetings with commissioners, just kind of ascertain if there's a desire to have a joint meeting? And if there is, then we'll get that process started. But if there's not, then there's just an understanding that if a commissioner hasn't requested it, then we wouldn't have a joint meeting?
If that's the commission's desire, I would like to go ahead and let's schedule some meetings. We can always, you know, decide
Well, that's
not
what I'm
to
saying, we
cancel.
put a framework together,
Mhm.
but if it,
Right, as we approach it, if there doesn't seem to be a need to meet collectively of meeting with people individually, then yes, I don't see why we would have a meeting.
all right, so what are the proposals for quarterly?
So me and Matt will collaborate. I'll bring it back to y'all individually, and then we'll put it on a meeting in the 1st of January as an approval.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Glavell?
I'd just like to say, I think the desire was expressed to meet, and I think we need to meet. And I think we need to talk about this at least a strategic plan on quarterly, that's every 3 months. And I'm not real comfortable with the idea of nameless commissioners telling Mr. Kellenberger we're not gonna do it, when we in
No, I was
public
just-
say
what-
we're gonna do it.
What I was saying is that if there was in his conversations with you and everyone else, if it came up that, hey, there is a need and we need to get this going, you could initiate that process.
I just say I think we need to meet, period.
Let us schedule the meetings, we'll bring them back to you. And like I say, we can, if there is whatever reason in a decision by the board, if they don't want to meet, then we won't meet. But let's put together the meetings. They're all obviously are well received by both bodies.
Hopefully, within a quarter, they'll have some of our more finite, we'll have moved this to the next level, so.
Yeah, well, your point a minute ago. So let's finish the strategic plan, set it, and then monitor it.
So we're all in agreement in quarterly meetings? Okay,
Agree.
all right, quarterly it is. Let's move to tab 3, funding for lights on US 331 bridge.
Okay, so this item has been around for a couple of years. A few years ago, there was, I don't know how many deaths there were on the bridge, but there was enough that local law enforcement, advised or recommended or asked, what is the possibility of lighting We put it in a legislative appropriation 2 years ago.
Yes.
The state appropriated some money for design of lighting on the 331 bridge. And that, of course, came with a match, and then there was no identified construction budget. So recognizing it's a gateway, we have to match some money to the state to move the project forward. That's what the discussion about is TDT appropriate expenditure. There is no defined cost for the project right now. It does keep going up apparently. So I think the question today is TDT an appropriate expenditure? And then how much TDT is the appropriate expenditure? In concert or in with consideration of the whole project. In other words, is there other funding that would be sought if need be?
What's the balance? What would it
So,
take to get us across the line?
Melissa,
The current estimate has the required county local funding at $6 million, $6,050,000.
It's double.
Originally, this was estimated to be 2.9 million, and it was going, the request was the state was going to put in 2.9 million, and then the county match would be 2.9 million, but the cost has gone up, the state contribution has not, so the estimated balance remaining right now is about $6 million.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize?
could we possibly agree to ask the sheriff, since he was the originator and he asked first, at least put some of this money up,
We'll be
and
happy
then
to.
we could see about getting the rest of it. That's the only bridge on a state highway in Panhandle that's not lit. And it does make it dangerous. I mean, there are fatalities on that bridge and serious accidents all the time. And that's the only way in and out, north and south, in Walton County. So I think it's a great project, but I think the first step is to see if the sheriff will help us, and then go from there as to where the rest of the money comes from.
Jeremy, how about if we do this? Allow myself, and we're fortunate that our beach operations deputy director is a former FDOT employee, and he actually has some intimate knowledge about this project. How about if we gain a little bit more knowledge about what the project is, get some current cost estimates from FDOT, explore some cost-saving opportunities maybe? And when I say cost-saving, abbreviation of the project, and then present that to the Tourist Development Council in the BCC as an informative presentation, and then we'll pick up from there as to a final decision on is TDT appropriate, how much is appropriate, and can we find other partners to join with us?
Everybody okay with that? All right, we're all in agreement.
We'll consider that as direction.
All right. Anything else from the board? Seeing none. Public comments. Mr. Bagney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the author of the original reserve policy, I want to speak to that. I was going to speak to some other stuff, non-beach nourishment reserve policy. It's got to be fixed. You don't pick a number and say that's what our reserve policy is. You pick a policy process, and that's how you establish the reserves. So the way we established the numbers that you had was when a storm comes, it's going to take us 6 months to get people back down here. It's going to take us 6 months of marketing. It's going to take us 6 months of paying people's salary. So we said 6 months, that's what we're going to reserve. Now, since then, we've built a lot of beach accesses, some parking areas and some things. It also included back then a little bit, and not enough, and this is what we need to relook. There are certain items you cannot insure. Walkovers are the perfect example. You can't insure a walkover for fire or storm because they're designed to break away in a storm, and then you go back and rebuild them. So what you need to do is establish a policy that says 6 months, and if that's not long enough in y'all's estimation, then make it 9 months or make it 4 months or whatever. We picked 6 months based on my experience at Rosemary Beach, that's how long we got back up to normal tourism had come back. We rebuilt all our walkovers for $1 million. We put the sand back on. We did all these things, and it took us 6 months, of which, and we were getting our regular assessments paid. We weren't dependent upon tourism tax, which this organization over here was. So that's why we established 6 months. So I would tell you to do an analysis and say 6 months or whatever y'all think is best, or your consultants. You've got to run the organization. You got to pay the people. You know, they may not be marketing as hard in the first couple of months, but in months 4, 5, and 6, they may be double marketing when you have a product, a destination for people to return to. And then you need to do some of those items that you cannot insure for, to include, if you do insure for them, like your parking on 393, the facility there, if there's a deductible, you need to have the deductible covered. This is just a math problem, as all reserves are. So if you do that, a number will come out. You don't just pick the number and say, oh, hey, 40 million ought to be enough, or 20 million ought to be enough. You pick a process. So I would ask you to do that. Mr. Chairman, on the questions on the airports, if y'all remember, some of you may remember, we incentivized Southwest to come into ECP. For a couple of years, we paid like $250,000 a year to incentivize them to do direct flights from Houston, Dallas, and I think Nashville.
Bring this in, we got 5 seconds.
Okay. And then the other one was event planners are the
All right,
people that
Mr.
need
Bagby,
to do.
I'm sorry, thank you. Who's next? Ms. Morano, you're recognized.
Barbara Morano. Commissioner Drake, this is a public workshop. I'm sorry you had to cut off Mr. Bagby. I mean, this is really the time when citizens are going to give you some input on this strategic plan. Can you
Ms.
give
Morano, if you would like to lead this meeting, you can run for office and sit up here if you would like to do that. The rest of us, we have a set of policies and procedures that we adopt, and we're going to follow them and adhere to them strictly. Are we
Thank you.
clear?
Yes, it is
Okay,
clear.
you're recognized.
And I'm glad you said that publicly. As far as the bridge goes, just remember that the Florida Power and Light wants to come over with their large structures. So just remember that going forward. I'm disappointed that the consultants left. They needed to hear the public information that we're going to talk. They needed to hear what Jim Bagby said. So I said to them, listen to the video. I was really here to thank everyone, and I'm going to take that time and say it. I'm going to thank the tourist department for all the work they've done. They've handed a golden plate to these consultants. Every time I listen to a TDC workshop and the council, you guys work very hard. You talk about Defuniak Springs. They are doing it without any tourist money, basically. You're doing a darn good job. It holds me back from going because of the distance, quite honestly. But Rosemary Beach had a tour of homes. They had 800 tickets sold, and in the rain, but unfortunately, they competed with what you were doing in Defuniak Springs. So that's something to look at. I don't think our consultants touched the citizens and their input. They talk about 3 workshops they have. I have my friend sitting in here. He attended South Walton. There were only 2 people there. How much input did they really get from North Walton? And you talk about authentic Walton. I have some concerns about the word authentic. What if North Walton is authentic? What does it make South Walton? So I really look at our marketing as far as authentic Walton, what that means. Did you really get enough input from the people up north? As far as their survey went, I try to analyze it. It was very confusing. There were 2 different types of survey, but the one thing that I really did see is that people did not feel that they were being heard. And I think the question was, do you feel residents' voices are adequately considered in tourism planning and decision-making, ensuring Walton County's quality of life? Only 3% of the people said they felt that their voices were adequately heard. And what I just heard from the chair today is proof of that. Now, I want to read something about North Walton. North Walton is not just, are you looking at the time?
Yeah, you
So,
have
okay,
27 seconds.
fine. North Walton is just not one entity. It's North Walton, it's Central North, it's Freeport, it's South, and then there are 4 entities to Walton County. We're unique. We're not authentic, we're unique. And, and I want to also say, there was a famous book, and it says, "We are a box of crayons, each one of us unique, but together the picture is perfect." So, thank you. I have much more to say. I'm going to stay here. I do want to talk to Clay for a few minutes,
Ms.
and thank
Morano,
you.
you're
I am
welcome to do
sitting
that.
down. If this is the way the BCC is going to be run under your leadership, I am concerned.
We're going to follow the rules. Anyone else from the general public? Ms. Reeves, our county historian.
Yes, I brought a map real quick. I'm not gonna go over it because I don't have time in 3 minutes, but this is a 1931 map of Walton County, and this is where our, from the Highlands, to the Gulf came from. And there's no mention on this 1931 map of the beaches being an economic factor. It's all about farming and that sort. So just, that's something to look at. Thank you for letting me be here. Does everyone know what this is? It's quartz, silicoplastic SiO2, what makes our beaches so special. And the one thing I want to adamantly speak against renourishment. It just galls me to think that we would destroy our best asset with CaCO3 or anything else. We have great beaches. We have our state parks. We have places like Watersound Origins, Sandestin, Seaside. They all have their beaches, which is great. We have a lot of beaches. Our Eastern Lake Natural Beach, Government Lot 13, by Coastal Dune Lake, is a great beach, has natural sand, and that's one of the things that helped these coastal dune lakes open and close. So whatever we do, that renourishment fund, spend it on something else, okay? And I was appalled they didn't mention historical. Did they ever say historical? That's one of the great things, besides our natural SiO2 sand, it's that we're historical. We're the 8th county created in Florida. And today is the 200th anniversary that South Walton left Walton County to help make up Washington County. South Walton was gone from Walton County until 1913. We came back, and then in 1915, half of Walton County and half of Santa Rosa County made up Okaloosa County. So in December the 9th, 1825, from Destin, all of South Walton went to make up this great triangle of Washington County. And what it was in Carswell's tempestuous triangle, they got rid of, you can't grow anything on that worthless sand, So, things do change. So we need to not do renourishment. We need to maybe think about that strategic retreat, return, some of that, think about moving back some if we need to. An 1837 map of Williams showed that this whole area from Destin all the way were sand hills. There's a lot of sand underneath some of that concrete. So let's not mess up our beaches with this renourishment. Let's protect that SiO2 sand that we have, and let's be proud of being historical. The whole county is historical and connected. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none. With that, Commissioner Johns moves we rise. Show that done without objection. Meeting is adjourned.
Commissioners, we have